sky is really talking tonight, it's saying. Their bodies will fall like the stars.
There's no animal tracks near the top of the trail. Whatever she was running from, she was running for a while.
Kyle Turner is a special agent who works as an investigator for the National Park Service. When a brutal murder is discovered in a remote area of Yosemite National Park, Turner gets pulled into a tense investigation. As it moves forward, dark secrets come to light that'll test their mutual trust, his nerve, and his very survival. It all starts with two young people climbing El Capitan, the towering rock formation that dominates the Yosemite National Park landscape. The climb goes smoothly. They're just about 90 meters from the top when a young woman suddenly appears, falling from way up high. On her way down, she gets tangled in the climbers' ropes, putting their lives in danger. Luckily, they manage to steady themselves, but they are shaken after finding the girl's lifeless body. Right away, the park rangers contact Agent Kyle Turner, who shows up at the scene. Turner's a quiet man, got a hard edge, and he isn't exactly well liked by many of his coworkers. Still, he takes on the case with focus. The officers in charge figure it's either an accident or maybe a suicide. Officer Naya Vasquez, a ranger who's just recently joined and only been around for a few weeks, tells him the rescued climbers say the girl fell from a higher spot on the mountain. Kyle brushes off the early guesses and decides to question the witnesses himself. He asks them firmly if they saw anyone else up top, but both of them say no. A storm's rolling in, threatening to wipe out any evidence. Turner, not wasting a second, rappels down to where the body's laying. When he checks it out, he spots some odd signs: wounds on the legs, drag marks, shallow cuts on the skin, and a bracelet that slips off by accident. While they haul the body up, something else catches his eye. Based on how the body looks and the direction of the injuries, he figures the girl was probably running from something. While searching the area, he finds a fresh blood stain on a nearby rock. During the autopsy, the coroner confirms the body's got all kinds of different injuries. With a fall like that, it's tough to tell what damage happened before and after the impact. Still, the discovery of a bite mark on one leg adds a new question. The mark's way too small to be from a mountain lion, maybe coyotes, or even wild dogs. They also find a golden tattoo shaped like an X, and a bracelet that Turner recognizes in a way that chills him. He thinks he's seen it before. The clues start piling up and all seem to point in one direction. The girl had been on the run for a while, maybe from something or someone. That night, Kyle heads out to look for signs and finds the girl's bracelet that had fallen off. Then he calls his ex-wife, Jill. She tells him it's 2:30 in the morning and she was asleep. He says there's gonna be a meteor shower on Thursday, the biggest in years. She asks if he's been drinking and he says he was just thinking about how they all used to curl up under a blanket to watch those kinds of things, and that's why he wanted to let them know in case they wanted to see it. Jill just tells him he should get some sleep, and her current husband says he's surprised Kyle still doesn't get the idea of boundaries. The next morning, Officer Naya knocks on Kyle's door. She tells him Captain Souter ordered her to work with him, thinking she might help speed things up. Kyle, with a sharp tone, asks if she thinks she's better than him at this, and she says no. Then she lets him know they ran the girl's prints through the system, but there were no matches, not even in the missing persons database. They'll keep digging for more info. Kyle tells Naya to check the park's employee list, because it's possible the girl worked there, though probably not in an office. When she sees a picture of a boy, Naya asks if that's his son, and he says yeah. She mentions she's got one too, younger, only 4 years old. She says both she and her kid's father used to work for the LAPD, and it was a friend who told her about an opening at the park. She figured it'd be a good idea to switch things up. Then, the two of them set out to look for more clues about the girl, walking the trail she might have taken, trying to figure out where she came from. Naya thinks they'll be driving, but Kyle lets her know they're going on horseback. After a long ride, they reach an old hunting shack. There, they find a robe stained with blood. Naya says the girl was running away and hid there. They also spot more traces of blood and fresh symbols carved into the wood. Naya opens a door and comes face to face with a bear, but Kyle fires into the ceiling to scare it off, and the animal backs away. Once outside, they keep walking till Kyle finds a bullet lodged in a tree trunk. He calls the coroner and asks if there was a gunshot wound. The coroner says he missed it at first, buried under all the other injuries, but confirms the girl had a single wound like that, so they figure she wasn't just running from coyotes. When Kyle gets back to the cabin, he finds his ex-wife, Jill. She's there because of the call he made in the middle of the night. They talk and Kyle asks if Scott's a good husband. She says yeah. Kyle brings up the case about the girl. He mentions she had a tattoo made of gold and they still can't ID her. Then he asks Jill if she's happy, and she says she is, as much as she can be. Later, Kyle stays alone in the cabin and imagines his son with him, the one who disappeared years ago and was found dead. That's the reason Kyle never left the park. It's the last link he's got to his son. He looks at the bracelet he found on the girl's body and remembers they used to give those out during the park's summer program as a souvenir for staff and guests. But that was 10 years ago. Officer Naya tells him stuff like that usually gets tossed or passed around, but Kyle insists it gives them a path to follow. Naya gets the idea to check the park's archives for a list of names of folks who went to the camp to track down possible ties with current staff. That's gonna be her task, while Kyle also suggests she look into connections with members of nearby native communities. The next day, the news reports growing concern in the park because of what happened to the girl, plus the earlier disappearance years back of a businessman named Sean Sanderson. Meanwhile, Kyle keeps his investigation going, heading deeper into the park's forest, where he finds some pills. The bottles marked with an X, just like the girl's tattoo. Naya's still digging into where the bracelet came from, but Officer Suter shows her a box filled with bracelets just like it at the station. He explains they were kept in case another camp was set up and lots of folks took a bunch for kids' parties. Naya passes that info along to Kyle. Meanwhile, Kyle questions a few suspects, including a junkie named Teddy, who deals illegal stuff to tourists and squatters in the park. Kyle shows him the bracelet and the tattoo, asking who does that kind of work. Teddy says anyone could have done it, that it's just an X, but Kyle pushes back, saying it isn't regular since the ink's got gold flakes in it. Teddy admits he's never seen nothing like it, says it's way too pricey for the artists he knows, so Kyle forces him to find out more, threatening to bust him for drug trafficking. Jill tells Suter she's worried about Kyle, because he's been calling her in the middle of the night. Suter decides to talk to him, which sets Kyle off, and he calls Jill to tell her not to do that again. Later, an investigator showing up on behalf of the Sanderson family's lawyers comes to see Kyle. He tells her he remembers the case. She says she's working on that one for wrongful death, and asks if he was the one who found Sean's vehicle parked off a road outside the park. Kyle says yeah. She mentions that a few days later, 3 campers reached out to the station saying they'd talked to a guy who might have been Sean. Kyle says they seemed convinced and that the area around it was searched, but nothing turned up. The investigator keeps asking questions and says she heard he led the search. She asks why he didn't leave the case to the Rangers if he didn't think it was a crime. Kyle says he didn't have another case open back then and that he likes helping in stuff like that. Then she asks if he was in shape to lead that search, considering that months before he'd asked for a leave of absence for a family issue. Kyle insists he was fine, and the investigator leaves. When he walks into the cabin, Kyle can't help reliving the desperate search for his son and the gut-wrenching moment he found him lifeless in the lake. The memory shakes him, throwing him into a short but heavy wave of grief. He snaps out of it when Naya knocks and tells him the tox report on the girl came back clear. No strange substances found. After hearing that, they both head out to a remote area far from the main park trails. There, they come across a small village lived in by a group of squatters, a mixed crowd made up of hippies, war vets, and folks who for all sorts of reasons chose to live off the grid and away from society. Naya asks Kyle if he thinks the pills they found in the woods might belong to one of them. He says it's possible, and that it gives them a solid reason to start asking questions. Kyle approaches a woman named Glory and asks about Grandpa, the leader of the settlement, a guy with a mystical vibe who calls himself a shaman. Glory tells him he's on a spiritual journey. Kyle wants to know when he's coming back, but she explains it could take days, maybe even weeks, depending on when he manages to find his center. To that, Kyle, with a sarcastic tone, says that in other words, he'll be back once the shrooms wear off. Then he shows her the pill bottle marked with an X and asks if she recognizes the symbol. Glory says Grandpa might be a lot of things, but he definitely isn't an artist. Then Naya shows her a photo of the dead girl and asks if she belonged to their group. Glory says she doesn't know her, so Naya decides to show the picture to the rest of the folks, asking if anyone recognizes her. One young woman seems to react like she does, but she stays quiet. Tension starts building among the squatters, and as the nervous energy grows, the 2 officers choose to leave the place without stirring up a bigger problem. Later, Kyle questions Shane, a wildlife officer who handles animal control in the park. He's known him for years, but Kyle doesn't fully trust him. He asks if anyone reached out to him recently about a coyote attack on a hiker. Shane says yeah. Then Kyle asks what he knows about the girl who fell from the rock formation. Shane says he's only heard what was broadcast over the radio. When Kyle asks why he thinks he's looking for Grandpa, Shane dodges the question. In the end, Kyle asks him for a bullet to compare with the one found stuck in the tree trunk. Shane agrees and hands it over with a tense, forced smile. Meanwhile, Teddy goes to a young guy who does tattoos and also happens to be his dealer. He asks about the money, but Teddy says the ranger took the stash, though he swears he'll get it back tomorrow. Then he asks if he's heard about gold tattoos, real gold being used as ink, but the kid says that isn't a thing. Teddy tells him the ranger said he found a gold X on a girl who fell from up top of the rock formation, and that same X showed up on a pill case. But the kid gets annoyed, says he doesn't know what Teddy's talking about, and throws him out. Later, he sends him a message warning him to forget about the gold tattoo. It isn't worth it. That night, Teddy climbs into his truck and gets attacked by a man. The next day, it's Suter and his wife Mary's anniversary. During the get-together, Naya finds out what happened to Kyle's son years ago. The kid was on a hike and at some point wandered off from the group because he knew the forest better than the guides themselves. They lost sight of him, and a man took him without anyone noticing. 2 days later, Kyle found the boy's body near the lake, but they never found out who was responsible. That drove Kyle to lose his mind and start drinking. Meanwhile, Teddy's body is found in a river by a group of young people. At the same time, Naya finds out that the girl's identity is Lucy Cook, who had gone missing in the woods when she was a kid. Nobody ever found her. She vanished from her father's house when she was just 7, right inside the park. Finally, they inform Kyle about the body found in the river. When they uncover it, he sees it's Teddy. Kyle tells Naya that the kidnapping case of little Lucy Cook was his. There were no signs of forced entry, no ransom note, just a blood stain on the carpet. Everybody thought the dad had killed her, but a year later he got murdered. He had moved away to try to forget, but someone found him drunk in a bar and beat him to death. But he wasn't the one who killed Lucy. They just wasted time trying to prove otherwise. Lucy's mother, Maggie, worked for years in park management until she got sick with cancer. She died 3 weeks after her daughter disappeared. She'd been in the hospital, and Lucy had gone to live with her dad Rory and a stepbrother named James. Kyle goes to look for James at his apartment but tells Naya to wait outside. James tries to run. Kyle chases after him, and James catches him off guard and knocks him down. He's about to hit him again when Naya shows up and pulls her weapon on him. James thinks Kyle's after him over a debt. Kyle questions him, asks what he knows about Lucy Cook. James says he doesn't know anything. Kyle reminds him they talked about her 15 years ago. James insists he had nothing to do with her going missing. Then Kyle shows him the pill case and asks who sells it and if the X means anything, but James says he has no clue. They don't get any solid info and the case just gets more confusing. On the way back to the park, Kyle asks Naya if she used to be a patrol cop in LA. She says yeah, that she wanted to be a detective. Then he tells her he knows about her partner, that he got suspended and investigated for stealing money during a drug arrest. She explains the father of her kid and her were never married and broke up a while ago. Then she asks who kicked him out of the New York FBI 25 years ago. He says he grew up on a ranch out in Colorado, and New York always felt far off. One day he woke up and realized he couldn't even see the sky, so he figured he'd take animals over people any day. Meanwhile, back at the park, the media is stirring things up over what happened to Teddy. Kyle tells Suter he thinks the murders are linked. Lucy Cook had a bullet in her leg. Somebody was chasing her. Later, Kyle sleeps with the front desk clerk at the park hotel, someone he's been having a thing with for a while. The next day, Kyle talks to Jay, a native friend from the area. He asks if he knew Maggie, and Jay says yeah, they were close friends. Kyle tells him the girl who fell from El Capitan was Maggie's daughter. Together, they question another native man who now lives in Maggie's old house. They ask if he's seen a young woman around and show him a photo, but he says no. Then Jay gives Kyle some of Maggie's belongings, explaining that the house's new resident found them and didn't know who to hand them to. He also mentions that a few months ago, he saw a young girl near the place, but not well enough to ID her. She ran off when he got close. Kyle shows Jay some drawings done by Lucy. Jay tells him they show old Miwok magic used to keep evil spirits away. Meanwhile, Naya heads out alone to the place where they'd found the shack earlier. Trusting her gut, she veers off the main trail and finds an old mine hidden in the brush. She decides to go in and check it out, but the ground gives way beneath her and she falls down a narrow tunnel. Rainwater starts filling the shaft slowly. She tries to climb out, fighting her way up, but ends up stuck, not able to move freely. At the same time, Kyle tracks down the young guy who does tattoos and confronts him, asking why he sent Teddy that message and what those so-called gold tattoos really mean. The kid says they're like a brand, like the ones put on livestock, a mark of ownership. Kyle shows him the pillbox with the X and asks if it's connected to those tattoos. The kid admits he's seen the symbols before and heard rumors about the tattoos, but says he's kept out of it on purpose. He doesn't know who's behind it or where it really comes from, just knew Teddy should stay clear, which is why he warned him. As far as he's concerned, nothing good ever comes from getting mixed up in that. Kyle heads back to the cabin and realizes Naya still hasn't returned. Worried and under steady rain, he saddles up and rides out to find her. He finally reaches her just in time, trapped inside the shaft. With effort, he helps pull her out and calms her down, telling her she did the right thing, trusting her instinct. What she found might just be a key lead in the case. A young guy shows up at the station saying he knew Lucy Cook when they were kids. He hasn't seen her in years and asks if they're still looking into her disappearance. Meanwhile, Kyle and Naya go back to the mine where they search carefully and find jars filled with illegal substances, all marked with the gold tattoo symbol. They realize they're dealing with a trafficking ring operating through the park's abandoned tunnels. A little later, Naya finds the old man's dentures and other remains which confirm he was executed and buried in a rush. Kyle sets up a raid on the illegal camp. They arrest everybody, seize drugs, weapons, and items with the gold mark. Then Kyle and Naya return to the station with solid proof that the mine was being used for drug traffic. Kyle questions Glory about the pills they found, but she says she doesn't know anything. He orders her release while the others stay in custody, hoping to dig up more info. Suter tells him the DNA results on Lucy are in. Rory Cook isn't her father. The guy who knew Lucy talks to Kyle and tells him her name used to be Grace. She grew up in a small town in Nevada, and when he saw the story, he recognized her. He says she lived with a pastor and his family went to their church. He shows Kyle a photo where Lucy's with a group of kids, including himself. Last time he saw her was 10 years back. The pastor said she left with her real family. He also brings up the reward, but Kyle tells him Lucy isn't missing anymore and that Suda's taking it from there. Naya tracks down the girl who seemed to know something about Lucy and decides to question her. She finds out Lucy used to hang out at the mine, had a secret boyfriend who got her into shady stuff, and that she'd carry drugs or cash. Besides selling with the old man, she also had ties to Pacuna, one of his close friends. Naya fills Kyle in on everything, including the spot where Lucy would do trades, and says Pacuna might know who they were working for. Kyle walks into a bar and runs into Shane. He asks what he knows about the old man, but Shane only heard the guy's dead. Kyle pushes, asking if he's got any idea who might have killed him. Shane says the list of enemies is pretty long. Then with a smirk, he says the girl who fell from El Cap is like some kind of miracle kid, came back to life after 15 years. He wishes Kyle luck with the case. Kyle asks if he knew the girl, but Shane dodges it, saying the convos got him feeling nostalgic, like they used to work together. Kyle shuts that down, says they never did, and warns he'll get to the bottom of it. Shane says the lady cop stopped by asking about the Sanderson case, and acting all innocent asks if Kyle remembers anything. Like the last time he saw Sanderson, he pokes at Kyle, but Suda shows up just in time to cut it off. Meanwhile, Naya heads home and finds an unexpected threat waiting, her kid's father. He demands she lie so he can get his badge back or else he'll take her to court for custody. Naya, scared but standing strong, grabs her kid and escapes, seeking shelter at Kyle's place. The next day, Jill watches the kid while Naya heads back to work. Kyle orders they release Pacuna in the field with no supplies or food, counting on desperation to lead him to the hideout. They tail him from a distance and the plan works. Pacuna goes back to a hidden spot in the mines, revealing another drug distribution center. Cops get there in time. During the operation, an explosion nearly kills Kyle, but they take down the head of the ring. The place is packed with drugs, weapons, and jars with the golden symbol. Later on, they find the bodies of several women who'd taken their own lives. They'd been manipulated into thinking that if something went wrong, it was better to die. They were used as mules, all bearing the same gold tattoo as Lucy. Inside the tent where the bodies are found, Kyle spots Lucy's backpack. Then Shane shows up, says he just came to have some fun. Kyle's suspicious. He got there too quick, like he already knew where to go. He tells him straight up, but Shane shrugs it off and says it wasn't hard to find the place since the police raid made enough noise. Kyle questions the ringleader and shows him a picture of Lucy. The guy reacts surprised, like he didn't know she was dead. Then Kyle interrogates other members, but he can't get any solid info. They finally figure Lucy Cook's killer isn't the same one who took out Teddy or the old man. Kyle also suspects the leader wasn't directly tied to Lucy's death. Meanwhile, Jill's taking care of Naya's kid when the father shows up out of nowhere and tries to snatch him. Jill tries to fight back, but he hits her. Luckily, Naya and Kyle show up just in time and arrest him. The whole scene leaves Jill emotionally wrecked. Later, she confesses to Kyle she felt jealous seeing Naya hugging her kid after all that. That same day, Jill tries to take her own life. She survives but ends up in the hospital, and her husband lets Kyle know what happened. After visiting Jill in the hospital, Kyle goes to confront Shane. He punches him and calls him out for telling him to stay away from Jill. Shane reminds him they both share a past and that it includes her too. In a tense moment, Kyle pulls his gun and threatens him, which gets him suspended right away. Another cop gets assigned to Lucy's case, and Kyle's forced to turn over all the evidence. While handing over the case evidence, he finds Lucy's backpack and chooses not to include it. When he checks it, he finds Lucy's phone. He plugs it into charge, but it asks for facial ID to unlock, so he heads to the morgue and asks the medical examiner for help. With a bit of clever work, they manage to get into the phone. Inside, Kyle finds a video showing Shane with Lucy, confirming they knew each other and he was involved in the drug traffic. Kyle calls Jill and tells her Shane's part of the drug ring and that he might be tied to Lucy's death. He promises he'll arrest him, even though he knows Shane's probably going to bring up the Sanderson case, trying to drag him down with him. Kyle goes after Shane and, in his stuff, finds a pill case with the X. Suddenly, Shane shoots him from afar. Wounded, Kyle manages to get away, but he loses a lot of blood. As night falls, Shane catches up to him and is about to shoot. That's when Naya shows up and shoots Shane, ending his life. Kyle ends up in the hospital and thanks Naya for saving his life. Meanwhile, Jill shares with her husband a secret she'd been keeping for a long time, one that'll change how he feels about her. She tells him a man named Sean Sanderson was the one responsible for their son's death. Kyle found out later, thanks to Shane, since he'd set up cameras in the park to track migration patterns. While going over the footage, he came across a video of Sanderson with their kid. Shane showed them the video and asked Kyle to let him take care of Sanderson. She didn't agree with arresting Sanderson, so she paid Shane to deal with him. Kyle found out later, and more than losing their son, what tore them apart was what she did. Later, Jill visits Kyle in the hospital and tells him he doesn't gotta worry about her. She'll be okay, and they reconnect through the pain they both carry for their kid. Kyle decides to dig deeper into Lucy's case, so he heads out to Nevada, specifically to the house where she used to live with the pastors. There, he meets an older woman who seems kinda confused, but he manages to get the name of her daughter, Faith. With that info, Kyle finds Faith, and she tells him her parents kept kids in the basement. Though they acted like a religious family, they actually abused the kids and used the money meant for social work for themselves. All the kids believed their parents were coming back for them. Lucy used to say her dad was a cop and he was gonna rescue her. With this new info, Kyle goes back to Yosemite and asks for another DNA test on Lucy. When the results come in, he confronts Suter. Suter admits Lucy was his daughter, but it was a secret. He didn't want his wife Mary to find out. Lucy only found out near the end of Maggie's life. Plus, Maggie had asked him to keep Lucy away from Rory. Blaming Rory for her disappearing was easy for him. Souter had taken her to a family he'd heard were decent folks and who'd keep secrets if paid. He also confesses he shot Lucy trying to get her to stop blackmailing him for money, since she kept asking for more and making threats, but he didn't mean to kill her. Lucy ran off wounded and fell from the top of the rock formation. Souter tries to get Kyle to stay quiet by promising he can keep working at the park, but Kyle says no. Before he can report him, Souter takes his own life rather than turn himself in. A few days later, Kyle turns in all the documents and evidence tied to Lucy's case. The case is finally closed, and justice is done in her name. Still, some secrets linger around the hidden dangers of the park. Before leaving, Kyle gives Naya a box with some toys that belong to his son, along with the horse, as a goodbye full of meaning. In the end, Kyle leaves the park, knowing deep down his son will always be a part of him somehow, no matter where he ends up. And with that, the series comes to a close.